So, what's the real difference between the people who actually achieve their goals and everyone else who just kind of gives up? It's a question a lot of us think about, right? Well, today we're going to dig into the science of staying motivated for the long haul. And here's a hint. It's not really about passion or willpower. It's something way more interesting.
I mean, seriously, 18 years. Just let that number sink in for a second. Could you stick with anything for that long? Day in, day out, especially through those long, quiet years when nobody's cheering you on and you have absolutely no guarantee of success? What on earth does that kind of dedication really take?
Okay, so picture this. There's this young guy, and at 10 years old, he's selling guidebooks at Disneyland. As a teenager, he's doing these tiny 5-minute comedy sets in noisy little clubs, sometimes to a completely empty room. By his early 20s, he's managed to stretch his act to 20 minutes, but he's still got to read poems just to fill the time. It was a slow, thankless grind for more than a decade with just these little glimmers of progress until, bam! In his late 20s, he explodes into one of the most successful comedians of his generation.
And that comedian? Yeah, it was a young Steve Martin. And his story isn't just about getting famous. It's a perfect masterclass in how you stick with something for the long run.
He actually summed it up himself, an 18-year journey. 10 years just learning, 4 years refining, and then finally 4 years of wild success. So what was his secret? How did he manage to push through all those years when he was basically a nobody? Well, the answer isn't just work hard. It's this incredibly powerful psychological rule.
And that rule is called the Goldilocks Rule. It's really the key to unlocking the science behind what keeps us at our most motivated. The rule itself is actually surprisingly simple. It just says that we hit peak motivation when we're working on something that's not too easy, but also not too hard. It's a task that is right there on the very edge of what you can do. It's a challenge for sure, but it feels manageable. Think about it like this. Let's say you love playing tennis. If you go play against a 4-year-old, you're going to get bored, like instantly. It's just way too easy. But on the flip side, if you try to play against Serena Williams, you just get totally discouraged. It's way too hard. You don't stand a chance. Neither of those is very motivating. But what if you play against someone who is almost exactly your skill level? Now that's where the magic happens. That is the sweet spot. Not too hard, not too easy, just right. This is the zone where Steve Martin lived for years. He was always adding just a minute or two to his routine, trying out a few new jokes while keeping some of the old ones that he knew worked. See, he had just enough wins to keep him going, but also just enough mistakes to keep him hungry. That's the Goldilocks zone.
And when you can consistently hit this zone, you unlock this incredible mental state called flow. You know that feeling, right? Where you're just so completely absorbed in what you're doing that the rest of the world just kind of melts away.
And you know what's crazy? Scientists have actually tried to put a number on this. It seems like that sweet spot for hitting peak performance, for getting into that flow state, is a task that is roughly 4% harder than what you can already do. Now, you don't have to get out a calculator or anything, but the principle here is what's key. You got to stretch yourself, but only just a little bit.
But here's the thing. Even if you completely master the Goldilocks Rule, there's a villain lurking in the shadows just waiting to wreck all of your progress. And it is not what you think it is. It's not failure. It's boredom. James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, shares this amazing quote from an elite weightlifting coach. The absolute best athletes aren't just the ones who are the most passionate. No, they're the ones who can handle the sheer monotony of practice. They're the ones who show up and do the same lifts day after day after day. And this is the huge idea that we so often miss. The single greatest threat to our long-term success isn't some spectacular, fiery failure. It's the slow, creeping, silent onset of boredom. It's what happens when the novelty wears off and the daily grind just stops feeling exciting. And we've all been in this cycle, haven't we? You start a new habit. Maybe it's a new workout plan. At first, it's exciting, it's new. Then after a while, it just becomes routine. The progress starts to slow down, your interest fades, and you start looking for the next new thing, the next shiny object. And just like that, your progress is totally derailed.
So, how do you break this cycle? Well, it all comes down to learning how to cultivate the mindset of a professional.
And trust me, this difference in mindset is everything. Just look at the comparison here. Amateurs, they let their mood decide what they do. They only work when they feel inspired or excited. A professional, though, they act no matter how they feel. They stick to the schedule. They show up when it's hard, they show up when it's boring, and they show up when they'd rather be doing literally anything else. That single commitment is what separates them.
Which brings us to our final and maybe the most important takeaway from this whole thing.
Okay, so let's pull all this together. To stay motivated, you need to live on the edge of your abilities. That's the Goldilocks rule. But, and this is the big one, you have to get ready for the real enemy, boredom. Because every single habit, no matter how exciting at first, eventually becomes routine. The secret, the true mark of a pro, is showing up anyway. At the end of the day, mastery requires practice, and practice eventually becomes routine. So if you really want to achieve something remarkable, you have to be willing to do what amateurs just won't do. You have to fall in love with being bored. So the real question is, are you willing to do the boring work to get where you want to go?